Joining next is Mr. Atisham Ahmed A. Thawar from ALMT Legal. Atisham's practice area includes intellectual property, commercial disputes, and arbitration. He has assisted clients in registering trademarks in India and internationally and has represented clients in opposition proceedings. Now we have Mr. Kenneth Sisodia from Z Entertainment Enterprises Limited. With over 15 years of experience in media and entertainment, IP, data privacy, and broadcasting, Mr. Sisodia currently leads the legal team at Z Entertainment, focusing on music studios and film divisions. Finally, we have Mr. Biswaroop Chakrabarti from Eros Media World. With 15 plus years in corporate law and IP, he has an expertise across technology, media, and e-commerce, providing strategic legal solutions aligned with the business goals. Let's give a warm round of applause to our distinguished panelists for this evening. Now I would like to request our moderator to kindly take on the session from you.
Good morning, everyone. Already we are, it's time 11:12, so we ensure that we'll finish the session within the time. So we have a very strict timelines. If you look at the topic, it's about copyright and trademark, challenges and solution for the content creators. So who are the content creators? Traditionally, if you look at the content creators, earlier were the movie makers, the television channels. When it comes to literary work, the book publishing companies. So these are the major content creators. But currently, in the current scenario, the era of digital world, anybody who is having a mobile phone with internet connection is a content creator. It can be a blogger, vlogger, viewer, mostly the social media influencers. They create a lot of content by involving video clips and audio clips. There are so many contents, even the images they take from various sources. So what are the challenges they have when it comes to violation of copyright? And what can be the solution when you look at the future perspective? So that is what the topic is about. And our panelists, we have an excellent panelist from a variety of industry. Niti Booch is from the university, Gujarat National Law University, from the academic perspective. And Mr. Atisham is from a law firm, ALMT Legal. And myself, I'm from a law firm. And Mr. Biswaroop is from the media industry, Eros International. And Shraddha ma'am is from a gaming industry. And our another panelist, Kinath, is from, again, big media industry, Z. So I think we will all have a very good session with having a different background. So let's start with the university first, and as a chivalry, ladies first. Ma'am, Niti Booch, can you please share your thoughts about this particular topic?
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and being the first, I'll definitely be watching the watch. So the remaining panelists, please feel secured. I will not eat away your time, because as academician, we are much known for that. Starting with the discussion, I think we all have realized a fact that the content creation has undergone a transformation thanks to technology. So as the moderator has rightly pointed out, earlier content creator used to be, those people who is skillful. I don't mean to undermine the existing content creators, but then those who create movies, those who come out with with a literary piece, maybe writing a book. So then, you need a skill set for doing that. With the age of technology and digitalization, there is a lot of ease which has been added as far as content creation is concerned. Of course, distribution and consumption again are such important aspects, which has also added a lot of ease in that way. And I think that ease is, the technology is a double-edged sword, and it as is adding a ease is also creating lot many issues. When we are talking about the issue, and as I come from university, what comes to my mind is content creation at the university level for the sake of evaluation. So earlier, when the students were submitting some sort of say projects or any such sort of write-up, we were not much concerned with where have they derived this from, because you have some books and some sources, but now you have anything and everything under the sun which will give you some sort of content. With that, the challenge that was put to us was how to then look at whether it is plagiarized or not, because there is a thin line of distinction between plagiarism and infringement. So, and maybe plagiarism is not a pure form of infringement, but even then it is not permitted, because that is using somebody else's work without crediting the source, and that is something which is not ethical. So IP system definitely is to legalize unethical use of anybody's creativity. And with that, of course, the UGC at the national level has come out with guidelines. Keeping that in mind, now the academic evaluations are taking place. With regard to that, how to draw that line between authorized use and unauthorized use, so that you don't end up being in within the four corners of either infringement or plagiarism. Then there is a concept of fair use. That particular concept is something which is in a way not very, very clear. The reason is not that it suffers from some sort of inherent flaws, but the thing is that it has to be applied case-to-case basis. What is the proportion in which the content is used, how that content is used, for what purpose the content is used, and then the theory, or rather the interpretation, is to be applied with regard to whether such use is plagiarism, whether such use is infringement. So just throwing something about throwing these topics to you, not just bringing you to any sort of solution, because we are talking about challenges. So the first challenge that comes to my mind as a university professor or university teacher is this, and I feel that as it is given ease as far as students are concerned for creating their own content, it somewhere is also taking away creativity and innovativeness from them, because things are readily available. So they would not try to structure it themselves, they will just borrow the structure, then they'll fill the gaps. And the Gen Z with which I am dealing, they are way too technologically, they are tech savvy, and they know how to go and use the paraphrasing tools. So when I am reading, sometimes you feel very much impressed, my God, but then suddenly the next para has a different flow. Because ultimately, though they are tech savvy, they definitely are 18, 19, 20 years kids. So then that flow, change in the flow somewhere tell us that there is something going wrong. But then these are the challenges with regard to content creation, because this content creation at the university level, if is done in an appropriate manner with an appropriate framework of copyright protection, will definitely then give us some excellent content creation who will make contribution in the field of copyright, which will be remembered forever. So as of now, this much from my side.
Thank you, ma'am. Now let's move on to the media. Yesterday when we had a discussion, Mr. Kinath Sisodia was talking a lot about this particular topic. Now it's your turn, Mr. Kinath, please.
Considering that the time, thank you so much for giving me this point to start off with. I would want to keep it simple and keep it short, considering that we have time restrictions. But the point from the media side of it is far and vast from a copyright perspective. Yes, you started out right to say earlier the content creators were relatively larger organizations. So your film producers, your television show creators, music creators, and your book publishers, they came in not only with a larger infrastructure, also in terms of skill sets, as Nidhi ma'am was saying, but also they were able to have some bit of guidance from the support systems, legal personnels, to tell them what should be done, how it should be done, and at least if they ended up getting a roadblock, they were able to get that legal guidance to comply with the applicable laws. Now, with anybody and everybody being a content creator, by virtue of having a phone and access to internet, it becomes very easy to create content, and everybody starts pegging it from the perspective whatever I'm doing is a part of free speech. Not rightly, because many a times they end up either disparaging somebody else's marks, uh, in a way, knowingly, largely unknowingly, end up disreputing somebody else, maybe to an extent of defamation, or largely using somebody else's content with a uh, uninformed way of looking at it, that if I use only a small portion of somebody else's work, that is permitted. Or, I mean, as they would have read at random Google responses, that that is fair use. If only fair use was that simple, we wouldn't be sitting here and again talking about it. But that's my opening onto it. I'm so sorry, sir. I'll keep that in mind.
Okay, just quickly, before you give the mic to the others.
Yeah.
So what is the current challenge you feel as a media industry because of the social media influencers are the guy who is going viral, they make more reels in Instagram. As a media industry, what kind of a threat you feel currently because of these people?
Uh, so again, coming back to if you're referring to a social media industry point of view, yes, a lot of people are using content. If you say, for example, Instagram or YouTube, people use a lot of other people's content without realizing what they're doing is an unauthorized use. They don't have permission. What they're doing is actually infringing upon somebody else's rights. Could be another fellow YouTube influencer, could be a larger organization. Now, if it is a larger organization, they would probably take it very, very seriously, and then these influencers, these creators would end up being in a position of facing heavy legal costs upon them by virtue of going towards infringement cases filed, and that keeps happening. There are a couple of instances where such cases have been filed. I'm sure Ehtisham can walk us through in terms of those certain case laws also.
Right. Now since he said Ehtisham. So Ehtisham, yesterday you were talking about this Dhanush and Nayanthara's case. And there are various cases we discussed, so you can just throw your thoughts on this.
Yeah, correct. So to continue to what Kenneth added, he rightly mentioned that the large-scale problem in today's age is the individual social media or these influencers or social media content creators. The lack of awareness is something that is creating the largest problem in today's space, is what my view is. There could obviously, not ruling out the possibility of intentional infringement upon someone's work, but the biggest problem is lack of knowledge of law, lack of knowledge of what the rights are of the company who may have engaged them for a brand promotion, or even if they perform some works for them. In fact, in case of artists, coming to Nayanthara's case also. In fact, I'll be also discussing one more case of Gaurav Taneja. I'll start with that and then I'll come to Nayanthara's case. So there's this interesting case of Gaurav Taneja, who goes by this social media handle of Flying Beast. And Castrol India had engaged Gaurav Taneja for a media campaign. It was about a zero gravity flight experience, and Castrol India had spent all the costs for conducting that ad campaign. That particular contract piece required Gaurav Taneja to post that video, post that experience, post that ad campaign through his social media handle, which he did not. And that was subsequently used by him in a particular video on his own social media handle much later. Castrol India went before the Bombay High Court seeking release for infringement, and which was acknowledged by Bombay High Court, granting relief to Castrol India, saying that this particular piece was a part of contractual obligation that Gaurav Taneja had, which was not performed by him. and it recognized the rights of the brand owner, and therefore Gaurav Taneja was directed to take down all the copyrighted work. Another such example is of Nayanthara and Dhanush case, which in fact you can also add value on because you've been personally observing it. Is where Nayanthara was a part of this movie of Dhanush's production, and a particular clip of that 3-second clip was used by her in the Netflix documentary which is published. Now, Nayanthara had applied for an NOC for a long time, which was rejected by Dhanush. But then ultimately she used a 3-second clip in her documentary, which was challenged by Dhanush in a 10 crore claim before Madras High Court. And what I understand from Mr. Ganpati, and he will add on to it, is that the argument that Nayanthara has interestingly brought is that the clip was not recorded from any of the production owned or hired video cameras. It was a personal video camera that was used, and therefore Dhanush does not have rights over the video that was used by her in the documentary. So that is something that I will leave on, and of course awareness is something that we'll talk further on.
Now we'll move on to the gaming industry, ma'am, because now there are so many games in social media. Not only that, the games like PUBG or Free Fire, there are also games which are replicating the similar games, and there are so many games are being created. The characters which are prominent in the game also is being replicated by so many other players in the market. So what do you see, and how do you see that the current trend? Where are the threats, and what can be the solution for the gaming industry, ma'am, from you?
Yeah, so basically I represented gaming and music industry as well. So with regard to music, I would like to share a few things. See this, and for the gaming also. So content creators are actually beneficial for us because more influencers, more bloggers, we actually collaborate with them whenever we have events. So basically their followers are used by us to increase the visibility, as ma'am was referring to Gen Z, Gen Alpha. So this gaming is mostly targeted to this age group. So content creators are, you can say, one of the marketing tool or what you can say, a channel that we use. So we have very good experiences as of now with them, with no like infringement or piracy as such, pertaining to gaming as such. But coming to music industry, we have faced a problem like our song title was getting copied. The song per se was not infringed, but our labels, that is just a poster, and song title was getting copied. So in this case, actually I don't know how effective it will be, but now we have started registering song title as a trademark. So that was a challenge we were facing in gaming and music industry. So now we have started registering song titles as a trademark in mostly in category of 9, 38 and 41. So that in future, like if there is a like documentation required for the proof of ownership, it might help us. Because when we want to take action on these platforms like YouTube, you have to prove your ownership, or there must be some appropriate court orders in place. So we thought that this kind of, what you can say, measures will help us. See, because we have to understand, I recently read a new term called relationship era. So your relationship is not personal relationship, it is basically between brand and consumers. So since if you are in a specific industry like gaming and music or any other product nowadays, it is very essential that you keep your consumers or the end users engaged in certain way. So that's why a lot of times we have to collaborate with the influencers or with the YouTube bloggers. But again, then there is an option of paid partnership, it is genuine endorsement. I guess we will deal with those questions later on. But as a gaming industry, this is the practice that we follow, that important artwork is copyrighted and important titles are protected under trademark. Now when you see a lot of games are there, if you click particular game and you see so many options, but you know what, when you actually check for the logo, because nowadays target consumers are kids also. If you see certain games, if you see the age limit, permissible age limit, it is 3+ for Ludo, which even I was surprised. I was checking the policies, it was only 3+. Now how do you expect the 3+ to go on any of the Play Store and understand all these implications? But it is mostly association with the logo, the pictorial association, because end user is not always educated class, or it is not of the age group who will understand the differences. So that's why the emphasis is more on title. And but once they open the game and if they come to know this is not the game which I wanted, they immediately, like you can say, the download game is again deleted. So that is taken care of. It is same like counterfeit goods. When you buy a product, considering that okay, this is of a specific brand, and then come to know this is counterfeit, then you be careful while buying it next time. So it is same like for our games. Once it is downloaded that okay, this is not a genuine game, it is immediately deleted because that experience which they are aware of is not there in the duplicate games.
Now, we heard more of a copyright perspective. And there is also another perspective for this topic that whenever you want to download or use some app, if you go to the Apple Store or Google Play Store, if you want to download Netflix, if you type, there will be 10, 15 apps which are having similar names or similar logo of Netflix for any other app for that matter. So Mr. Bishwaroop was talking about more of an unfair competitions and what are the threats when it comes to maybe a passing of a trademark perspective. Even sometimes it is also about disparagement or comparative advertisements. So Mr. Bishwaroop, can you please share your thoughts on this?
Thank you so much, Ramesh. Before I actually skip to the trademark and the unfair competition bit, I would want to kind of carry on a little bit of the copyright angle as well. I think most of the panelists and have actually, at a certain level, been very clear about what are the challenges for content creators in creation when it comes to technology and the way that it is. And if I were to borrow a thread from Nidhi when she spoke about plagiarism and when it talk about infringement of content which is created, and how infringement is at a certain level automated primarily because of various platforms, whether it's AR, VR, which is used in the background, whether it's music tracks that you're using otherwise, or whether at a certain level there are platforms which of generative AI which just allow you to create content at a certain level which is so much easier to plagiarize or so much easier to kind of infringe without any relation back to the original content. I think that's something that we also need to look at when we are looking at from the perspective of content creator. So if you actually look at from the copyright angle, principle-wise, I think there are two things there. I would probably bucket it into two parts. One is the fact that in copyright, you're always looking to protect the reproduction itself. So if a generative AI, as an example, all these platforms were to actually come up with something which is very similar to what was already there, what was existing, you can obviously go back. It's a very easy case of infringement at that point of time, going back and saying, okay, these are the principles, these are my salient features, these are all copied, and as a result, an infringement action. At a point of time, the thing becomes a little fuzzy the moment there is enough transformative use with regard to this particular content itself. If the content by itself has transformed generative AI, whatever it's produced, it's transformed into a situation which is not relatable back specifically to the original content itself, the question then lies on principles of, is this copyrightable? Does it meet the test of the sweat of the brow or modicum of creativity as we know it now? Is this the only way that this idea could have been expressed, an idea expression dichotomy, which Nidhi was also speaking about at a certain level? If an idea can only be expressed in 5 ways, and if all the 5 ways are taken up, can somebody actually allege infringement? So that is where the interesting bit lies. If generative AI creates content similar to that of a content creator, but it is transformative enough for it to be different from the original creator's content, is that infringement, and is that at a certain level enforceable under law? And I think that remains a challenge for copyright content creators at some point of time. So that was on the copyright bit, and I'm sorry I kind of jumped there first. And on the trademark bit, and I think Ramesh was absolutely right when he says that trademark it's actually a bit of a misnomer. If you again go back to jurisprudence, and I love going back to the law bit. So what was the function of trademarks? The function of trademark at a certain level where very clearly over the centuries has been to identify the origin of the goods or services. But today's trademarks are not that. Today's trademarks are actually more on the principles of unfair competition, where you're talking about a lack of attribution or you're talking about a lack of integrity. So at a certain level, when you apply it to content creators, there is no longer as to whether a personality has created something or a personality has not created something. That is not the question anymore. The point now is, if somebody were to sell merchandise, if somebody were to sell something else, or somebody were to say that this content is actually endorsed by X, Y, and Z, is that something which is allowed? And that is where unfair competition and trademark kind of become fuzzy again. And when it comes to content creators, that is exactly where the problem lies. Now, if we look at it, unfair competition also now, at a certain level for content creators, delves into the realm of personality rights. And this is something which has been there for ages. Now, call it whichever name. You call a rose by whichever name, it still remains what it is. So personality rights is something that has been protected in India, I think, for the longest time. Probably it started from some case of Dalai Mehndi in 2010. Then you had a bunch of other people. Recently, Anil Kapoor, which is the Jhakaas thing, which is in the Delhi High Court. Unfortunately, you have a bunch of articles which say a lot of things which is not really necessarily what the judgment says. The judgment clearly says that you cannot use the word Jhaka, so you cannot use Anil Kapoor's attributes, which again is a protection of personality rights and personal attributes rather than and more on the verge of unfair competition, saying that you cannot commercially benefit from the attributes of a person primarily because you think you can get away with it. But that is something which is also there. And also recently at the Bombay High Court, you had Justice Chagla pass a judgment with regard to Arijit Singh as well, which specifically says that you cannot use Arijit Singh's attributes, the singing attributes, to create songs which sound like Arijit Singh. Now, these are the same things that generative AI is actually doing, where at a certain level it is creating songs that sounds like Arijit Singh, sounds like Kishore Kumar, sounds like Mohammed Rafi, and you can actually do that. And that at a certain level is content which is being created now, which has no attribution back to the original artist, primarily because the original artist has no clue, other than the fact that there are algorithms which are allowing that to happen. And I think there it's more a protection of personality rights which need to be enforced at various levels, and unfair competition which also kind of becomes this square peg in a round hole which kind of adjusts itself and fits in at a certain level to protect content creators.
Ms. Kinath, yesterday when we were discussing about this, you had a case wherein there was the song was picturized with the Gujarati.
Yeah.
So can you please just share this thing about?
Yeah, so it's a scenario that we landed up with the content creators not understanding what they are doing could be infringing on somebody else's rights. We had a situation where an Oriya song created by us, Oriya song was the audio as well as a music video of that was created by us. There were certain visuals in which the song had a visual flow. Some influencer, somebody on YouTube ended up recreating very similarly sounding Sambalpuri version of that song. The audio, music composition of the audio was very similar. Even the music video flow in terms of a village girl and a village boy running around and doing things was frame to frame very, very similar. And we faced that as owners of the original work, prior in time, uploading in time, but because it was not directly identifiable because different players, it's not something that they have lifted the pieces from my music video.
The whole idea of the song.
The idea of the entire song was expressed in the same way but by different artists.
Right.
And the composition was very, very similar. When we tried reaching out, we faced that difficulty. When we tried reaching out to them to say, you are infringing upon my rights, these influencers were not responsive onto it, which puts in a position at some points in time, a lot of content creators have done this in terms of, say, trailers of films. People have allowed that, okay, fine, if I have put on a trailer for a film, if other people are really ripping it off and putting it on other platforms, doesn't matter because I'm still getting the promotions for the film. But in this case, for example, a music video of mine being put or monetized in a manner which supersedes and bypasses my overall monetization is a problem. Now, the first approach as a larger content creator would be that I sit and arrange in some kind of a licensing arrangement with them and get this settled out. But more often than not, these content creators don't realize what they have done and what they think is an inspiration is actually an infringement. Puts stress on them when the larger content creators will go to courts and there will be infringement actions taken. Makes it difficult and brings us to the point that awareness is not there.
Etisham, when it comes to this kind of creation, especially when it comes to reels, a short video, we take it from some movie song or some clip from somewhere. We all know that the concept of fair use from the copyright point of view, though it is a traditional concept, we can always apply that even to the current era. So what do you think when somebody is creating a short video, but ultimately it is getting revenue from the views, when you have millions of viewers and followers, you are taking somebody else's copyrighted work, though it is few seconds or few minutes, but you are generating revenue out of it. So what do you think? What is the challenge and what can be the solution in this kind of situation? Etisham.
As Kenneth rightly said, that the first thing is because they're not aware about what the implication of it, what it could be, they start reproducing the reel in their videos. But whether it is a short video or not, ultimately it is the work which is copyrighted and owned by the company or by the content, the original content creator of it. And therefore, if there is a monetary exploitation of that work, if there is any monetary gain in that work, of course the content creator owns all the rights over it. And therefore, of course, the first step is, of course, to go for an infringement and also to take down the work that has been published. And also, the biggest problem is about routine monitoring. So established content creators have this biggest difficulty is that they have to keep monitoring all the content that they have that is being plagiarized, that is being copied, any bits and pieces of that which are being posted on so many individual social media content creators, influencers. So that is the biggest task. And then while it is their work, while it is being exploited, like in this case, the example that he gave, they had to actually go into analyze whether, okay, this idea has completely been copied and that has been expressed in a similar manner. So this is the biggest difficulty, a challenge. And unfortunately, there is no clear solution to this if you ask, and I'm sure most of you all will agree. So A is, of course, create awareness, and second, you cannot the routine monitoring is always going to be required because you cannot otherwise stop so many people, billions of people copying your content. And from an individual social media contributors who are used by media industries or even gaming industries, as she rightly said, they are also relevant at some points for promotional items, for promoting all these trailers, teasers, or also when these artists go to these influencers for those initial pre-release promotions. When they are engaged, I think it is very important from a content creator's point of view, the company who is engaging them for these promotional items to also give them a little background about what their own legal rights are and what are the implications if they actually put across the work in a different manner without proper authorization, without taking an NOC. Otherwise, implications could go into big challenges for these individual content creators, even if they are big time artists. We have the cases right now we discussed already. So awareness and also creating these awareness as well as also informing them routinely. So one more point is exactly, I'm not going to take much time, but one more point is there has to be a prompt action, and also these individual content creators should also engage their own lawyers, take legal advice before producing certain content which they feel has the likelihood of causing someone a harm, whether monetary, whether if it's a work owned by them.
Great.
I'll end there.
Shraddha ma'am, so when it comes to, see, you said that you engage these content creators sometime to develop and promote your own work. So what do you think that, like he said, awareness, in terms of copyright, do you think that getting a right contract and proper clauses in the particular contract that will protect the interest of the content creators and gaming companies. So what is your thought on this contract and having a proper clauses and having a control over your promoting artist, please?
Yeah, see, when it comes to a big influencer or a known influencer, we have a proper paperwork in place because it is the reputation which is at stake. So, of course, it is guarded with a proper agreement, but when they are small influencers, they depend not small in size but in fame. So, it is mostly, they are not directly paid. For example, we sponsor their travel or accommodation to come to our event. So it is not directly paid as such, but they are indirectly, what you can say, compensated for their work which they are doing for us. So it is agreements, of course, but agreements is not possible with everyone because this is short time engagement. So like having an agreement with n number of influencers and other content creators is not possible. So it is not with all, but only with the big names, because recently we had a big league of cricket which was concluded, and we have 3-4 big names who were associated with us. So that time we had proper agreement because with them we engage frequently as an ongoing activity, but for the temporary assignment we don't have any paperwork as such. Now why these content creators are important? Because we have to understand this content creator, whatever they say, their decisions are influenced by the end users. So they have an impact not only on B2C but B2B as well. So when you were mentioning about disparagement, so it is, there may not be a direct loss, but at the moment, nowadays there is a concept of trending. If it is trending at that time, like for the song, there was a blockbuster song we had by Sapna Chaudhary, artist Sapna Chaudhary, Jale. So at that time, the song was trending, we needed immediate action. So taking and striking down at a YouTube, it was taking a lot of time. So that even sending notices, as you rightly said, we don't get quick remedies. So that's why we came up with this option of registering song titles. That is Kolavari D, I guess, was the first song title that was registered in India. And we thought we should follow. But this cannot be done for all songs because budgeting and filing for each, it is not possible. So only the songs which we think can be a good blockbuster, we adopt that strategy. So coming back to the point with the impact factor of this content creator, it is B2B and a B2C. So what impact it is? Now B2C, you have a proper consumer law in place. So you can take a proper legal remedy. But when B2B, that is at time if any of the consumer or the end user, his decision is influenced, and because of that particular content or reel, if he changes his preferences, now there is no accountability of this, nor can you claim any kind of damages that these number of users were taken away because of this content. It is very difficult to, what you can say, quantify such kind of damages. So, and I guess ASCII has come up with the guidelines for this in 2021, which are specifically for the influencers. So what you were saying for the awareness, ASCII is trying to do it, but yes, it is not reaching grassroots because many times the content creator is a language problem, which we are facing. Now we are operating in Haryanvi, Bhojpuri and Odisha market, where they don't even understand in English and Hindi, or like difficult to word. So we have to translate our contracts for them. So language barrier becomes also an issue when it comes to an awareness, and ASCII is doing it in English, it is not possible for them to understand. So that is also one challenges that we are facing because of language.
Thank you, ma'am. And finally, before going to ma'am, Vishwaroop, when there is a violation, how challenging it is when it comes to the enforcement. When somebody is violating your copyright or trademark, though we have some, Delhi High Court is doing a wonderful job, and Madras High Court, even Bombay High Court, we have a John Doe orders, things like that. What do you think, what should be the role of judiciary in quicker in action whenever you go for a copyright infringement? So what is your thought about it?
I think that's a very relevant question, Ramesh. Thank you so much for that. The bit about enforcement is most of our judiciary is very evidence-based, and it's very clear that certain things need to be done and certain things cannot be done. For most of us who have actually done IP litigation, you would realize, let's say, even to show that you have a trademark, you have to go for a legal proceeding certificate. You cannot show your trademark certificate. You'll have to apply for it, get that. All of that needs to be coordinated. Now, in most cases, I think the judiciary needs to recognize that most of these things are dynamic. And it is happening on a continuous basis. If content is, as an example, being pirated, It's like a hydra. So you bring down one particular site, and that site will now have an alphanumeric number, which is now going to again come up with that same content. You bring down that, it's going to come up with anything else. So site blocking to a certain extent, we've obviously in India, we've had a bunch of situations where you had site blocking. You've had situations where the police has set up crime units specifically. So it started with London, which was, I think it was PIPCU, which was the Intellectual Property Crime Unit in Scotland Yard, which is something which started in Telangana, in India for the first time. It was Telangana Intellectual Property Crime Unit, and then you had something in Mumbai as well, which is MIPCU. Basically saying that enforcement cannot now wait for the judicial order for somebody to start looking at documents, passing an order in 3 weeks, and then thereafter doing it, because by then everything is over. Which is exactly why a John Doe order also becomes very required. As an example, you're releasing a film. You're starting telecast for the IPL. You're starting something, there is an event which is being, let's say, a Filmfare Awards, which is there. You cannot now wait for you to start telecasting, for somebody to pick it up, get an order, and then go back and enforce, and by then everything is over. Everybody's already taken the viewership, everything is gone. So at a certain level, I think the judiciary needs to recognize that it has to be faster, and what it also does is also give enough powers to the content owners to be able to do that and approach it faster in a certain way.
Thank you. Finally, ma'am, your view.
Yeah, just I think the concluding remarks. I think all of us definitely have concluded with this opinions that we have shared, that these challenges have become palpable now, right? We just cannot turn blind to them. Now, where are the answers? We all are looking for answers, and as has been pointed out rightly by Bishwarup, that we can't really be dependent on judiciary all the time, because that is quite time consuming, lot of money, energy, time, everything will go in it. So what is the answer? In fact, when we were having the pre-session meeting, all of us were also talking about awareness, because the awareness has to be there at both the level. The one who's creating the content needs to know where the infringement is taking place, and those who are using, the users, they need to know that they use it in a manner which is not unauthorized use, which do not put them in a situation of any sort of litigation or any sort of notice or any such sort of problem. Now, this is something which seemed to be very, very idealistic, but I think this is the answer for everything if the awareness is generated. With that, I would also say that I think the judiciary can also be, I think, more sensitive towards it, taking up or grabbing the opportunities of coming out with such kind of decisions which adds to the judicial jurisprudence. Like what we have on fair use, the sacrosanct principles that we are following. We have the Delhi photocopy case that has definitely defined certain boundaries, but that is very much limited to academia. It is statutorily expressed in form of section 52 in the act, but then where are those interpretations? And of course, in our discussion, it has also come out that when these kind of things are widely published through social media or other platforms, all of them are not talking about the interpretation as it has been given by the court. It is, and of course, those who are creating this content would also say that at the end you can read with a hashtag that the opinion is personal. So my opinion is there, maybe it's not matching with the exact interpretation. So all these things are also adding to a lot of confusion, and I think I would say that as we grow with this, we will also need one day definition of transformative work. We don't have. AI generated work is transformative work. What is transformative? We do not know. There is no such expression which is there. We all are going with the common understanding. So all these things are definitely before us, and knowing about it, and those who are using and those who are creating, probably now they are pushed to a corner whereby they can't say that, okay, I did not know. Right, and of course, as it is said in law, if you're ignorant, sorry, that's no defense. You have to, absolutely, you can't plead ignorance before the court of law. So I think with that, I would like to end. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. I think we had a wonderful session. I don't know whether we have time for questions. Sorry? Time is up. Okay. I'm sorry that we had a very short session, so we don't have time for the questions. Thank you so much for the patience.
Well, such an intriguing and enlightening session. Now I would request Mr. Ramesh Ganpati to kindly come and felicitate our guest. Uh, First we have Dr. Shraddha Gujar Damle from Jet Synthesis Private Limited. Next we have Dr. Nidhi Buj from GNLE. Mr. Atisham Ahmed from ALMT Legal. Mr. Kenneth Sisodia from Z Entertainment Enterprises Limited. And Mr. Biswaroop Chakrabarti from Eros Media World. So with this, we come to the end of the session. I'd request everyone to remain seated. We just have a break for 2 minutes, and we'll get the stage ready.